The term nostalgia is derived from two ancient Greek terms, nostos, meaning the return home, and algos, meaning pain. Ergo, the sting of an old wound, or the painful desire to return home, even if that home is no longer there. Japan in the 80s was an unstable paradise. After the 70s deregulated financial markets and low interest rates increasing the gross value of yen relative to the American dollar, the last few years of the Showa era was a neon-colored cityscape with pop culture and consumer spending exploding like never before. The innovation of the Walkman brought music from disco clubs out into the streets of Tokyo, while the average salaryman brought in big returns for their branch of an ever-growing conglomerate holding company. Bosozoku gangs would ride their bikes through the nightlights as local families prepared their visit to the newly opened Tokyo Disneyland. Frivolous spending became somewhat of the norm. Shonen Jump was releasing hit after hit, the Famicom was quickly becoming a household staple, and the airwaves were filled with a new kind of pop for a new, rebellious, lively generation. It seemed as if things would stay like this forever, a nation with a booming economy and a strong national identity. A place in the world looked upon fondly for their exports and innovations. And then, a calm. The death of Emperor Hirohito on January 7th of 1989 signaled the end of an era. And going from the Showa era to the Heisei era, the economic bubble that Japan's economy slowly built up through land speculation and lack of returns from Zytec investment firms led to a growing economic instability. And in 1991, that bubble popped. This was the beginning of the lost decades, from the 90s all the way to the 2010s, where unemployment continued to rise as the economy attempted to stabilize. No longer were the streets paved with neon, now they're just as gray as they've always been. While pop culture continued to evolve, the glitz and glam of 80s Showa fashion and music tastes began to be perceived as tacky, almost shameful. It was as if Japan itself was ashamed of its own choices, relished in forgetting that period when things were good, too good, and built on faulty foundations. Yet, now in the Reiwa era, that appreciation for big hair and bigger personalities has started to come back. Thanks to the YouTube algorithm of all things, and of course Spotify, generations of not only Japanese youths but international markets have slowly warmed to the aesthetics and stylings of musicians such as Tatsuro Yamashita and Toshiki Katamatsu. Women like Maria Takeuchi or Miki Matsubara, who paved the way for later genre experimentation like future or hyperpop. And the focus of this particular video, one Akina Nakamori. After performing on the popular talent show Star Tanjo and the release of her debut single Slow Motion Womo Ichido in 1982, Nakamori's popularity skyrocketed as she continued to release hit after hit such as Shoujo Ai and Bye Bye Lullaby. A true idol of the Showa era, she would appear on national television in films such as Ai Tabidachi, where on set she would meet her then-boyfriend Masahiko Kondo. She remained popular, a beloved icon of 80s Japan. Until she wasn't. In 1989, after releasing another hit single called Liar, implying the infidelity of Kondo, she would attempt to take her own life that July. For a time, Nakamori herself was ignored by a portion of the public, even after quote-unquote apologizing for such a selfish act as self-harm. Nakamori would eventually rise to the top once more, reinventing herself in her music before finally taking to social media in the 2020s. Yet, despite her growth and Japan's growth from that time of emotional and economic turmoil, there's this desire to look back, to study the culture that birthed this icon of pop, to return to a time where things were brighter, more fun, more free. Even if those people looking back weren't even alive back then in the first place. Slow Motion Womo Ichido is a seinen romance manga that was released by Big Comic Spirits from August of 2016 to May of 2018. Written and drawn by one Rie Kano. It follows Hiro Otaki, a popular high school freshman due to his athletic skills and social aptitude, who often keeps to himself and works after school at his tough single mother's bar, Slow Dance. Part of this self-imposed isolation is due to a deep secret he harbors, one he's afraid will get him ostracized by his peers. He's really into the 80s. Not just the music, no, he loves vintage toys, TV shows, magazines, the whole 9 yards. He believes he's weird for liking this, the only one in his school who seemingly does. That's until As if in slow motion, two hearts cross paths, destined to be together. This is Tomoyo Yakushimaru, a quiet and somewhat mousy girl who is far more isolated socially than Otaki. After dropping a silent but physical hint that she may know his secret, and of course an in-universe excuse to get him to go over to her house, Otaki discovers that Yakushimaru is as big of a fan of 80s culture as he is. Even more so, training to be an idol in secret, mimicking the styles and fashions of those city pop Showa-era stars. And so, a heartwarming and somewhat cheesy romance begins. One, of course, not without complications. Romantic rivals in the form of long-forgotten childhood friends or a newer, older waitress at Otaki's mom's pub. Some occasional will they, won't they with a splash of dramatic backstories, and, well, you get what you signed up for. However, the key differences I want to stress about this manga in particular compared to its contemporaries are twofold. One, it's short, only clocking in around 64 chapters in a total of 7 volumes. And two, the romance is actually great. It's clear from the start that these two bozos are going to get together, so it's only a matter of when in the story compared to the usual if, with generic rivals thrown in. Otaki and Yakushimaru are two peas in a pod, dealing with adolescent romance as best as the two can, two fatherless children finding comfort in the culture their parents grew up in. And 80s culture is a big part of this manga. Beyond just aesthetics and Yakushimaru's fashion sense, almost every chapter is a reference to either Japanese pop culture or some kind of song from the time. There's constant excuses to cram in references to obscure media like Aishete Knight or classics like Skebon Deka, to random traditions of the time like giving potpourri to celebrate one's swift recovery. It's used in story to not only revere those golden times before our main characters were even born, and not only as set dressing for the occasional gag, it's truly essential to appreciating the work. Akina Nakamori's discography isn't just reference for the sake of, hey, that's the title! Its bittersweet romantic themes permeate the work in its best and worst moments. And while again it does occasionally play the romance manga game of padding with side characters, the side characters at least get an arc of some kind. People develop in this manga, not just the leads. And it's kind of refreshing being able to say that. It's paced well despite that padding, and it goes a long way to show how far these two crazy kids are willing to go for one another. I don't want to spoil the ending to this, I think the journey is part of the reason why, because seeing Otaki and Yakushimaru get together is such a delight. Their chemistry is natural and they have great comedic timing. You truly start feeling for these two kids by the end. You feel happy for them and want them to succeed. It's a romance where both the guy and the girl actually like each other and try to make things work despite their own personal emotional problems. Isn't that what a romance manga should be? People being people, bonding over similar interests before slowly realizing how much they enjoy each other's company, helping each other be a better version of themselves. Love is a new beginning, and like any new day that approaches, you gotta take it by the horns. Japan's economy recovered from the lost decades, not growing back up to the insane height of the 80s, but it's not close to crashing anytime soon. Nakamori recovered and started releasing new music within the past decade, music that's different from the synth waves of yore, but still good all the same. And this manga, despite being short, ends in such a way that you feel refreshed after reading, like it was a journey worth taking. Sure, you can read it again, but that first time is special. That memory of it being so good is the thing that keeps you going. It's what brings you back. I think what I'm trying to say is that after stumbling, you pick yourself up again. You keep going no matter what's ahead, especially if someone's there beside you, rooting for you all the way. You can rebuild. Thank you for watching.